Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Freely Nourished, the podcast that empowers you to break the cycle of dieting by teaching you to nourish your body well. I am your host, registered dietitian Erin Casey, and I'm also the owner of New You Nutrition Counseling, where we believe that you can reach all of your health goals at just about any body size. So if you are ready for some real deal nutrition advice that doesn't involve any diets, any gimmicks, any restriction, or any misery, then join us. We are ready to serve you, hear what your goals may be, and do anything in our power to help you reach them from a safe, ethical, and sustainable nutrition approach. Just a quick reminder, we have just launched the registration for our membership service, which is called The Cauldron. So if you're not familiar, the last episode I just posted, the one right before this one, goes into detail as to what all is the Cauldron is, what it means, what all you can expect for it. But it is basically a membership service with a monthly membership fee. You can cancel at any time. That's not the point. And the goal is just to create a community of folks who are also trying to break out of diet culture. So as you can probably tell from my mission statement and my tagline, most of my clients, if you're listening to this and you're like, that sounds like me, most of my clients also sound like you. And that is wonderful for me. I'm so honored and happy to be able to serve all of you. But I also recognize that many of you in your day-to-day lives may feel very isolated in those goals. Still, today going against diet culture is going against kind of mainstream society. You are going to encounter friends, family, loved ones, coworkers, all of whom are still very much wrapped up in diet culture. And that may make your own journey a little bit harder in some ways. And it also just may be more difficult for you to feel like you have people you can connect with, at least in that aspect of your life. So my goal was to basically create what I have, which is a community of folks, all of whom are trying to break out of diet culture, and give you a space to come together and gather and support each other. So like I said, very last episode, I'll post it in the show notes as well, so you can just click on it. But that gives you all of the details about it, the pricing, what's included, all that good fun stuff. But just a reminder, registration is still open. It's not going to close at any time. You can cancel at any time. It's a really great low stakes way to start getting more involved and kind of just see what New You Nutrition is all about. So today, what I have prepared to talk to you about is something that honestly, I would say at least 70% of the people I see have some sort of issue with. And I will also say that it is in most of those cases, not the issue they come to me with. They don't come to me with these issues. It's just something that comes up in our counseling, and that is digestive disorders. So issues with digestion can actually tell us quite a lot about our health, not just the health of our digestive tract, but also our overall health. You may also be aware that because of that, or I guess really the other way around, the reason why that is that our digestive tract actually has a really big impact on the rest of our overall health. We now know that, the digestive tract has a role in regulating mood and emotions, and also can help regulate body weight, body temperature, immune function. All of these things are tied not necessarily exclusively to, but in some part to how our digestive tract works. So having a happy, healthy digestive tract is actually really important for your overall health. And it also can be a really big clue that something else might be going on. So today I'm just going to run through some basics, right? Some very basics of questions I get all the time, of things that I hear all the time. I feel like this is at least the second or third episode I've done on digestive stuff, and it just kind of keeps coming because, again, it's so common. So many of my clients come to me with it. So I will probably do more in the future as questions continue to arise. But, of course, keep in mind that this is, just a very broad, very basic overview that I'm able to provide in, a 20 to 30 minute podcast. Obviously, I could talk for hours on this topic, and everything I say may or may not apply to you directly. But if there's something that you hear and you're like, I'm not sure what to think about that, or, that might sound like me, definitely get it checked out. link up with your healthcare provider or reach out to me directly and ask a question. If it's something that we need to hop on a discovery call to discuss, we certainly can. If it's something where I feel like, you know what, that's honestly just not in my scope of practice to help you manage, but I can direct you towards a healthcare provider that can. So not meant to meet any kind of diagnostic or therapeutic criteria, really more just kind of giving you an overview and some awareness. But of course, if any of this rings any bells or sounds any alarms within you, check it out, investigate further. And get it sorted out, because your digestion is important. So kind of in order of things I have to talk about, I get a lot of questions about kind of irregular bowel habits. Now that can go in both directions, right? That can mean constipation, which means you are not having bowel movements frequently enough. It also can go in the direction of diarrhea or frequent bowel movements or urgent bowel movements. If you have never looked up a Bristol stool chart, I highly encourage you to do so. I will link one in the show notes below, but it is basically, and this is kind of one of those, like, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? And it really is when we're talking about poop, right? Because what your poop should look like, what's normal, what's not normal, honestly, the Bristol stool chart is going to lay out in kind of a series of 1 through 7 what's normal and what's not. And so kind of looking at that consistency, so a 3 to a 5 on the Bristol stool chart is kind of considered normal. Anything that's less than a 3 or greater than a 5 is considered abnormal. Now, may that happen incidentally if you eat something that, like, doesn't agree with you? Yeah, of course. But that should not be your norm, right? You normally should fall between a 3 to a 5. And honestly, where you fall on that range is kind of where you should always fall, right? You should always kind of have, your stool should be relatively consistent for you day to day. And it also should fall in between a 3 and a 5 on that Bristol scale. It is also, frequency is also a really important factor. So how often you are using the bathroom. What is normal, again, can range. Normal can be 3 times a day. Normal can be every 3 days. If you are outside of that window, definitely reach out to a healthcare professional, because that is not normal. And if you're outside of that window, I should say, on a regular basis, right? Again, sometimes you're going to eat something that maybe doesn't agree with you so well, and you're going to have more than 3 bowel movements in one day, but that kind of clears up over 24 or 48 hours. Same thing, if you're traveling or on pain medication or whatever, you may have an instance where you do go for more than 3 days without having a bowel movement, but that should not be happening on a consistent or regular basis. And again, what's normal for you should be consistent to you. So if you normally have a bowel movement every other day, then that's your normal, right? And anything that deviates too far from that for a long time can be an indication that something's not quite right with yours. Whereas somebody else may have 2 bowel movements every day. And that's also normal. And that's kind of what is normal for you. So I always say, start tracking it if you're not sure, right? Because sometimes people think like, oh man, like I'm having these like really urgent bowel movements. And, the reality is when I have them track it for like 2 to 3 weeks, they're not. It's just kind of, they have a couple of incidentals, but it's not overall a huge problem. So when in doubt, collect data, right? And as much fun as it sounds to track your poop habits, honestly, it can be very beneficial. One, in understanding kind of what your normal is, what is kind of a normal rhythm for your body, but also to understand if there are things that are upsetting your stomach or any type of pattern that you can identify with it. So by that, I mean, if you have a very stressful job Monday through Friday and you notice that your bowels just do not function the same Monday through Friday as they do on the weekends, that's a clue, right? That's a clue that like maybe part of the issue with your bowels isn't anything you're eating per se. It might be the stress from your job. Another example is that if you are, let's say you are a truck driver by trade. If you notice that like the days you're on the road, if you're on the road for like a week at a time, you may have 2 bowel movements within that whole week, but then when you come home, you're having two every single day, that might be an indication that like, okay, yes, you can't just quit your job, but that might be why, right? And taking more regular breaks, getting more movement throughout those breaks, that might be the key to kind of regulating between the two. So it can be really helpful to identify what your normal pattern is, but also any type of causal factors that may be playing into it, both food and non-food related. So that's actually one of the first things I do is when I notice that whether the patient comes to me and says they're having bowel habits or bowel issues, and or I ask and kind of get more details on it, and I'm suspicious. One of the first things I have them do is do a symptom and a food log. So a food log doesn't necessarily mean like calorie tracking or like counting macros or anything like that. It's literally just kind of what did you eat and like what were your bowel habits like that. And it's literally just kind of like two columns. One's a bowel column and one's a food column, and we just kind of literally kind of I have them collect that data usually for about 2 weeks, because I want to make sure I get a full weekend in there too, because eating is very often different between weekdays and weekends. And we kind of just see sometimes we're able to easily draw a pattern between foods that they're eating and their bowel habits. Sometimes it's not so clear. Again, if you collect the data and it's not like abundantly obvious to you, work with a dietitian, right? And work with one who is specially trained in digestive disorders. I am, but that doesn't mean you have to work with me, right? You may find someone in your area who works with it. A good place to start would be just your primary care provider to ask for a referral. Many people also can get that information through their, like if you have a health coverage website, so like if you have Anthem Blue Cross or United Healthcare or something like that, log into their website and look for providers in your area. Most dietitians are actually fairly well versed in digestive disorders in general. But if there's something that you're really if you're concerned about a food intolerance in particular, you might want to see somebody who's specially trained. There's not like a special certification for that. I would just either look at their website or on like some type of call with them or their office, just ask kind of, hey, like I'm having these types of issues. I'm worried about a food intolerance. Is there somebody that specializes in that particular area, or is that something you're comfortable managing? If not, I guarantee you they can give you somebody in the area who is. We all kind of have our special subsets. So mine's kind of eating disorders and digestive disorders, but I have friends that work in more sports dietetics. I have honestly a friend here who is more specialized than I am in food intolerances and gut health. And there are also dietitians who do renal things and diabetes things that much more proficiently than I do. So we all refer to each other all the time. So even if you find a provider and they're like, you know what, this probably isn't me, that's still going to help you get to whoever it is that you need to see. To that end, digestive. So, the way to figure out what's going on and whether or not it's normal is to track it, right? So that's kind of step number one. If you notice that you are out of alignment with either the every 3 days or 3 times a day or the 3 to 5 on a Bristol stool scale, it could be any number of things, right? That there's starting with a food diary that lines up with your symptom log can be a really good way to kind of figure out what's going on. But there are others as well. And again, I would encourage you to just kind of pursue further education and further assistance on that, because it's just going to be very individualized depending on what's going on with you particularly. So that's kind of the first question I would get asked is what's normal and what's not normal? And if it's not normal, what do I do about it? So that's kind of at least where you start on what to do about it. But ultimately, that's kind of when you would seek further guidance at that point. Keep in mind, however, that regular intake creates regular stool. Okay. So what I mean by that is that eating regular meals, eating kind of the same amount consistently throughout the day and day to day is what's going to also help regulate your bowel habits. This is a big reason why digestive disorders are often the first diagnosable sign of an eating disorder. And again, why digestive issues very often co-occur with eating disorders, because eating is dysregulated. People aren't eating consistently. Sometimes they're not eating enough. Sometimes they're eating too much. But very often, more often than not, they're not eating regular amounts at regular intervals of time. And your digestive system just shuts down, right? So your digestive system likes to have relatively regular input, at least 3 to 4 times per day. Now, I say at least. You can definitely eat more often than 3 to 4 times per day. But if you are currently like not eating breakfast, maybe nibbling on something for lunch, and then eating a huge dinner, you might want to listen. Your body is going to do better the more calories it gets earlier in the day. That is just because the hormones that keep your body and brain awake also keep your digestive system running properly. So you may have heard that it's like not good to go to sleep on a full stomach. That's not because you're going to just convert all of the food you ate into fat, but it is because the hormones that turn on sleep turn off digestion. So you're simply not going to absorb those nutrients. Your body's not going to be able to make the most use of it if you were eating too close to bed. Similarly, if you eat more throughout the day, your body's going to make better use of those calories, better use of those nutrition. You're going to feel better, and your digestion is going to feel a lot easier. So kind of coordinating when you're eating with eating more of your calories while during those waking hours. Now, that said, does that mean if it's, 8 o'clock and you haven't had dinner yet, not to eat it? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is try to avoid eating large meals for about an hour to 2 hours before dinner. Before bed. So again, there are going to be times, right? Like eat dinner, never skip dinner. Okay. But try to avoid making dinner your largest meal of the day, particularly if you tend to eat dinner late in the evening within an hour or two of going to bed. So the goal is, to not eat large meals. Now you can eat snacks and whatever, that's not going to affect much, but you don't want your large meal to be within 2 hours of bedtime. That said, you can eat a meal, you just probably don't want it to be your largest meal of the day. So and again, making sure you're eating at least 3 to 4 times per day throughout the day will help you get there. It will help you regulate how much you're eating. It will help you regulate when you're eating, giving your body that space. Another way to think of it is eating kind of every 3 to 4 hours. Again, you can eat more often than that if you need to, but try not to let 5 hours pass without having eaten at least something, preferably a meal, but at least a hefty snack. That is usually my number one thing to help people fix their digestion. If there's nothing else that's obvious going on, then eating regular meals, regular poops. Okay? That's the simplest way to think about it. The other thing to think about is your digestive enzymes, right? So this again kind of falls in the category of regular meals, regular poops. But it's for a different reason. So your digestive enzymes are secreted by both your stomach and your pancreas. So when you eat food, your body produces a whole bunch of enzymes to break that food down so that you can absorb it, right? Digestion is actually the process of breaking it down into small molecules, and absorption is it actually transversing across the membranes of your digestive tract and into your bloodstream, which is where your body can actually put it to use to do all of the things that it needs those nutrients for, right? So those enzymes basically are the process of digestion. That's how your body breaks down food. They operate on a supply and demand basis. So what I mean by that, and kind of the analogy that's honestly most familiar to most people is if you think about breast milk. Very often people think, oh, my baby's not eating that much, and they stop pumping, and then their milk supply dries up because the milk supply relies on demand in order to create the supply. So your digestive enzymes are the same way. What we tell, breastfeeding mothers, even if their infant is not eating well, is pump, 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 pump to keep your supply going. Digestive enzymes are the same way. You need to eat in order for the supply to become regular, right? If you are not eating a lot or not eating at regular intervals, your body is going to down-regulate the supply of those digestive enzymes, which means that if you haven't eaten all day, you have very little enzymes on board, but then you eat a huge meal in the evening, you're going to feel all kinds of bloated and uncomfortable. And like you may have diarrhea simply because your body is not in a position to be able to handle that because it does not have the digestive machinery in place because you have not been eating regularly throughout the day. Again, go back to that supply and demand. If you continue to supply food to your stomach, it's going to have to continue to create those enzymes. That cycle kind of gets up and running, and it kind of just, it runs and it runs and it runs. So that's, again, another reason why you want to eat regular meals, not go for more than like 4 to 5 hours without eating, eat well-balanced meals. So meals that contain protein, carbs, and fat, so that you get all of your digestive enzymes rolling and you keep them rolling throughout the day. Very often I hear, a lot of supplement companies marketing themselves as like, digestive enzymes and things like that. Frankly, that's garbage. The over-the-counter ones are literally garbage. The only exception is, I will say, is lactate, which is a very specific lactase enzyme to help you break down lactose, which is the sugar in milk. That one is good. The rest are just like generic enzymes that like help with bloat and digestion. Like, no, they're trash. There are prescription level digestive enzymes, which again, if you were having this like bloat and cramping and diarrhea and indigestion and things like that on a regular basis, see a doctor, see a dietitian, get with a healthcare team. There are prescription enzymes that are appropriate for certain conditions. But that said, they are prescriptions, and frankly, they are expensive because keeping enzymes stable is difficult. There's a lot of biochemistry that goes into it. Honestly, I can't tell you all of it because I don't fully understand it. But what I do know is that enzymes are finicky. They're very subject to temperature regulation, which is how they work, right? Like they go to work in your stomach because the acidity is a certain way and the temperature is a certain way. That's kind of what makes them active. But that said, they are volatile little things to try to get into a shelf-stable product. So I can guarantee you the supplement companies are not putting that amount of effort. Something that you can buy on the shelf for $20 is, there's no way. There's just absolutely no way. So if you're buying those, stop wasting your money. They're not digestive enzymes, and if they are, or at one point were, they're not active in your gut. So there's just no use for them. That said, if you do suspect that there is an issue, there are prescriptions that very much are, and they work very, very well. So I just wanted to kind of point that out as well. Let's see what else. The other thing is, a lot of people, questions I get about this are, food intolerances versus food allergies and whatnot. So I've said this before, I think on other podcasts, but a food allergy is an immune response. So what that means is that your immune system has perceived some part of that food to be, an invader or whatever. It sees it as a problem, and then it is actively creating an immune response against it. That tends to present in things like hives and rashes. It can be anaphylaxis. It can be digestive issues like diarrhea and vomiting and stuff like that. But it tends to err on this more severe side. The only way to accurately test for food allergies is with an allergist, or at least your primary care. They usually do a combination of blood work. It's called an IgE panel. And what that is, it's looking for the antibodies that your body would be producing against kind of the top known allergens. If you also like have a suspicion of something that is, not in the normal kind of 12 panel test, they can test for those additionally. For example, I have a friend who's allergic to chicken, but she kind of suspected that, so she asked them specifically to run chicken in addition to all of the other allergens. If you don't have a suspicion, then they just run it against the 10 most common allergens, which, for over 90% of people with food allergies, that there is going to fall in one of those categories. They also typically do what's called a skin prick test. So they take your arm, they prick you with a whole bunch of different things, usually the same 10 allergens. And then we kind of cross tabulate the data. So the IgE testing is great if it identifies something positive. It sometimes can miss things, but the skin prick test, as well as like symptom management, you're going to kind of piece it together and see what's going on. But it very much involves working directly with a healthcare professional. There are like over-the-counter kits that you can order or buy that like claim they measure like food intolerances, and they don't. A food intolerance, more often than not, is a digestive enzyme issue. So it is basically your body is not breaking something down correctly because you either don't have the enzyme's not functional, whatever the case may be. Again, that's going to involve further testing by your doctor. The other thing is that you can potentially break something down enzymatically correctly, but you are creating byproducts that are then causing symptoms later on in your digestive tract rather. So that can be something like FODMAPs and stuff like that. They create gas as a byproduct. So the things that you're, quote unquote, intolerant to, they're actually broken down correctly. They're just creating an exorbitant amount of gas, which is creating your symptoms. Again, work with a dietitian or a doctor to identify those things. The panels that are available over the counter, or like the mail order kits, those are garbage. I honestly don't even know how they can legally claim that they measure anything. They measure IgG antibodies, which are an antibody that literally is like the thing that shuts off IgE. So it's basically the opposite. It's the antibody your immune system makes to say, hey, these foods are safe. They're not invaders, don't create an immune response to these foods. So if you flag positive for an IgG thing, it's something that your body has perceived as safe and like is actively working to not create an immune response against. So that's not an intolerance. Those are more often than not foods that you eat frequently. And I can't tell you how many times that people come in my door and they're like, oh, well, like all these things that I was eating all the time. Like, yeah, no wonder. And it's just the test is they're garbage. They're absolute garbage. They're a waste of money. And they don't tell you anything about food intolerance. All they tell you is honestly probably things that you eat frequently. Which is not useful. Right? Most of us know the foods that we eat frequently. I've also gotten questions about I can't remember if they're like over the counter or if they're like DNA, like spit swab tests that you mail off. But basically that, kind of assess the genetic composition of your microbiome and tell you like the best diet to eat for you and things like that. I wish the science was there for that. I really, really do. We can probably, they may accurately assess the genetics of your microbiome, but I can tell you right now, as somebody who avidly participates in like every CEU on this topic, there is no way in hell we have anywhere near enough information to correlate the genetics of your microbiome and what's going to do best dietary wise for you. We just do not have that data. It is a huge labyrinth of information, and it's a hot topic right now. There's lots of research going on with it, but we don't have answers. We have more questions than we have answers. So any kit or test or anything like that is telling you, hey, we've got the answers to this, they don't. They absolutely do not. The science is just simply not there. We don't understand it well enough to make any type of concrete recommendations. So don't fall for that one either. Things you can do. So we talked a lot about regular intake. That is probably priority number one. Priority number two is probably getting enough fiber, which most people know that fiber is good for your digestive system, but most people don't realize how much you actually need. The recommendation is about 15 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories eaten. So if you eat 2,000 calories a day, that means you're looking at about 30 grams of fiber. If you're eating 3,000 calories a day, that means you're looking at about 45. That said, those are rough estimates. Everybody has slightly different tolerances for fiber. And especially if you're starting on the low end, you may not want to like just throw in a whole bunch of fiber into your diet, you will definitely wind up gassy and bloated. You want to ease yourself into it. If you are starting at, say, 5 grams of fiber per day, I would increase that. I would aim to increase that to 10 every day. So, go up to 10 for like a week and a half, then go up to 15, like a week to a week and a half, and kind of just keep scaling up in like those 5-gram increments until you kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm good. For reference, an apple has about 4 grams of fiber. So a whole apple has 4 grams. So in order for you to get into like that 30-gram range that most of us are sitting in, you got to eat your fruits, you got to eat your veggies. Those are probably your most common sources of fiber. I think people think about fiber, and a lot of times they think about like cereals or Fiber One bars and things like that. And those things do have fiber too. But fruits and vegetables are going to be kind of your higher octane sources of fiber. There's some things to be said about like soluble versus insoluble fiber. They act slightly differently in the microbiome, but I would say unless you have kind of specific reasons to believe you should eat more than one than the other, then just aim for more fiber overall. And again, that kind of goes with our normal recommendation of like 3 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. If every serving has 4 grams of fiber, well, if you eat 5 of them, that's going to get you about 20 grams. It's going to be really close. And so that's, again, kind of where that recommendation comes from. But again, work yourself up slowly if you need to. The other big thing is, again, just a general healthy habit is water. We need adequate water to produce stool. Stool is largely water-based, even when it's solid stool. So having enough water on board, both to kind of create the stool, but also to ease it out of your colon, is really essential. Again, the recommendation there is about half of your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh about 200 pounds, that means you need to be drinking about 100 ounces worth of water every day. Again, you can work your way up. If you're currently like 30 ounces per day, start aiming for 50 for a week, or kind of however long it takes for 50 to feel normal, and then aim for 75 for a week, and then aim for 90, right? So kind of, work your way up slowly. A good way to kind of start is aim for about 20 ounces of water, which is kind of one of those like, standard water bottles. Aim for one of those with each of your meals. So aim for 3 meals with 20 ounces of water in each meal. Have a fruit or a vegetable with each of those meals. That will kind of get you your fiber, your water, and your regularity for your regularity. Okay. That's a place to start. And then you can obviously kind of increase as you need to, and tweak it, generally speaking, from there. But that's kind of a good place to start. So that is all I have for you today. I am sure you all will come with, these are always like, I hear so many questions about these topics. So definitely keep your questions coming. I'd love to hear them. And if there's any new doodads or supplements or things like that out there, please reach out and let me know. I'm always love to talk about these things and research them. But with that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And like I said, eat your fiber, drink your water, and eat regular meals to have regular poops. See you next time.